I think every time I watch a new episode of Strange New Worlds, I kind of just, by the end of it, I've laughed a little bit, I've cried a little bit, I've sat there and gone, man, this is like some of the best TV I've watched in a very long time. And I think what makes it work so well is that we're dealing with overall like standalone episodes. And I'm a huge fan of story arc, linear storytelling. Give me a tight, clean 10, 12 episode season with a good story arc that goes all the way through. I'm down for that. That's my favorite form of television. But the standalone can also work exceptionally well, as we're seeing here with Strange New Worlds. In a lot of ways, I can look back at like the early seasons of the X Files as another good example of a show that it just hit right. Would have a couple of story episodes here and there, but for the most part, standalone stuff. So, great episode as always. Again, if you're first time here, I don't do spoiler free, everybody. So we're gonna be talking all the things after this. So if you don't want things spoiled, make sure to go watch the episode and come back. But if you're ready to have all the things talked about from the beginning to the end, or at least the things that I think were important, welcome along. Here we go. Here's your countdown. Five, four, three, two. I'm gonna take a sip of coffee, give you one last chance, and then we'll go into spoiler territory. So, this episode starts off with Captain Pike in a romantic engagement, and he ends up having a breakup with his girlfriend. He thinks that he's hurting her career because she was, involved with the case against Una, and so she's been skipped for promotion, and he thinks it's his fault. So he says, "You know what? I'm ruining your career. Maybe we should just take a break." She's upset by this. They kind of, it's not necessarily an amicable breakup. Um, and then as they're dealing with the aftermath of that, there's an emergency call that comes in, and we find out about this planet Rigel 7, which apparently Pike went to with Spock years ago. They went down, were attacked, and lost some crew members. Lost, I think, like three crew members. Made it back and never went back. It was a 4-hour trip down there and back, including the emergency evac. And that's it. But that name gets brought up in this report, and Pike is off to the mission. And this is honestly, I think, one of the best acted and in terms of what's about to come part. The breakup, I will admit, was not. I don't personally think the direction during the breakup scene was okay, but the the next scene after that where he's explaining to Una what just happened and he's in his office and he gives like a completely different reason for the breakup, and then acts so kind of nonchalant about it. I was like, that doesn't feel like Captain Pike. So there was a little bit of a moment there, during the pre-prep for the mission. But apart from that, what comes next on the planet is what I really want to focus on because this planet in and of itself, I think, would make an amazing novel. Do they still do Star Trek novels? Anybody? Does anyone know? Because I remember when I was a kid, like late single digits, early teens. I remember one of my like a great uncle gave me some Star Trek novels years and years and years ago. And they were really fun. I didn't really quite get them at the time, but they were, I remember them being entertaining and adventuresome. And this whole episode felt like a book to me because when we see these guys, they're going back to the planet. The reason they're going back to the planet is because on Rigel 7, there's been a flyby every couple of years since they had their encounter because technically they didn't break the Prime Directive, but there's always, they continue to send flybys just to keep up on things every couple of years. Well, one of the flybys, they notice a big Starfleet symbol that's been put into like the courtyard of a palace. So they realize that something got left behind. So they got to go back and they decide to go in undercover. And Pike takes the Doctor and Lieutenant Union Singh down with him because they're the most capable combat, but they're going down with no tech, no transponders, nothing. They get down to the planet. They're dealing with, trying to make their way to this courtyard palace thing to figure out what got left behind. And Lieutenant Noonien Singh starts suffering at first, but she goes through this like she has hearing loss, and then suddenly 6 hours have passed, and she doesn't know where those 6 hours went because it just passed like that. She heard a ringing in her ears, closed her eyes, and when she opened her eyes, she was suddenly here and had lost track of 6 hours of time. Um, that's a big problem, and she was very confused. And then she started having headaches and everything else. And then they get to the compound, and they see that they have blaster rifles, phaser rifles, blaster rifles. I'm thinking Star Wars, but they had phaser rifles, so they definitely left some other stuff behind that they didn't know they had left behind because in the rush to get off the planet with a wounded Spock, apparently he didn't keep track of weapons, and so Pike realizes now that some stuff got left behind. Um, as the mission progresses, essentially we find out that um, the way this was acted was so well done because they eventually get captured, thrown into this cage. When they wake up, they realize that all their memories have gone. And there's also this moment where they meet this guy who's like the king of the place, right? Who's the king of the castle. And they find out that he's one of the presumed dead Starfleet officers, or not officers, but people that had been here on the planet with the away team. However many years it was ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, and this guy's been stranded here the whole time, and had built up this place, but also, um, the separation of like slaves and the royalty here, where he set himself up to be king, but apparently all of this is dictated by this phenomenon where everyone in the palace is shielded from this radiation that's affected the planet, and this radiation causes memory loss. And it's a daily cycle. So every day they basically go through the first, which is ringing in the ears, and a passage of time. And then after that, you kind of wake confused. But then there's fear and this anxiety as your memories start to fade, and then eventually you completely lose, who you were, and the only thing that's left are emotions and things that are like instinctual for you. So instinctual because they're ingrained in you as a human being, like walking or breathing, right? And then there's things that are instinct by training. So if you are, as an example, if you were a doctor, that training would have been something you've done your whole life. So you have that innate ability. You know bandages, and you know how to address a wound and fix those types of problems. And if you are a pilot, then those instincts on how to fly things is going to be there because you've spent thousands of hours either in the chair, in the cockpit, in the training sims, whatever. But those instinctual things are the only thing that's left. And so it's this really terrifying episode where everyone starts to lose their memories. And what they come to realize is there's this asteroid that hit the planet, and that asteroid has been causing this problem. Well, there's also the remnants of all these of these planetary, couple of moons or whatever that are in orbit around the planet. Apparently, one of those pieces broke free and or was knocked free or whatever and hit the planet, and that piece of the rock is what's causing the radiation. Um, and it's crazy because the people on the ship start having the same symptoms, but at a slower pace than the people on the planet because they're in a distance from it, and they're in between the asteroid field and the planet, but they're in orbit around the planet. But even they're being affected slowly over time, and they start to realize it. And so, Spock and then the other doctor on the ship. Commercial time, everyone. Huge shout out to the Guild Champions, who are our highest tiered membership here on YouTube. We've got Bubbleonia, Ancient Entity, Crazy's Relative, Remy D. Thanks so much for your support here on the channel. And of course, to all of our members who help keep me full time here on YouTube. Thanks so much for your support, for being here, for checking in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon, super chat any live streams or premieres you see, super thanks any video uploads you see. Don't forget YouTube Shorts in that category as well. And hopefully, we'll see you in the next live stream. Don't forget the Discord. Links are down below. Let's get back to the video. Vasquez, they're all, they get their own data files and trying to remember who they are. Una loses hers like pretty quick. but it's a great episode. Also, I every time Vasquez does stuff, I love her character even more. So there's this one moment in sort of the earlier parts of the episode where she thinks that she's getting to go with the away team in disguise, and so she's like, because originally she was on the away team, and when they get back, um, when they're not when they get back, sorry, when they're on their way to the shuttle, they get the report about the asteroid field in orbit around the planet, and they're going to have to basically readjust the course every 20 minutes, which means she has to stay behind to fly the Enterprise. So she doesn't get to go on the mission, but there's this whole moment where she's in her in her room and she's like getting dressed as the character and she's like, for the first time ever I get to go off on an away mission, and she's just super excited. I love her character more and more every time, and I think the acting when she started to lose her grip on sanity. There's this scene as well. She's coming down the turbo lift and hits her deck, but she's in a panic because she doesn't remember who she is. She's at the helm. There's this. I should explain this part too. There's a moment when they realize that something's going on, and so Spock orders her to fly the ship into the asteroid field to, deal with it. But they don't realize at the time that the effect came from the asteroids. So when they get in there, it's like an instant hit to the whole ship. As soon as they hit the asteroid field, that wave of radiation hits everyone, and it's like an instant memory wipe for the whole ship. And there's this scene when she comes down a turbo lift and she's coming out on her deck and she's literally talking to herself like, who am I? Where's my, I need to go somewhere safe. I need to go somewhere safe. Please take me somewhere safe. And she is being guided by the computer, which is showing her lights and everything in the hallway back to her quarters. And she gets back to her quarters and she's having this complete meltdown because she's just terrified of, she doesn't know anything. Who am I? What is going on? And there's this scene as she's walking down the corridor where the whole deck has lost their memories. And so it's just like a bunch of people aimlessly wandering the hallways of the ship. This one guy huddled on the floor with his knees drawn up to his chest, and he's just like rocking back and forth, and he's just like he's completely lost his memories, and he's just like sitting there in the corner just like this. Like, I was like, this episode is terrifying. Imagine this happening in space, right? Like, you're toast. Like, there's so many unknown things that you can come in contact with in space. And yeah, these guys are all highly trained and everything else, but that's a terrifying aspect of also submarines on a similar way, that like confined space where you can't get out and you just have to deal with whatever's there. But then Vasquez clawing her way back to sanity as she realizes, wait a minute, I'm the pilot, because the computer tells her who she is. And um, Anson Mount's acting, as always, is very, very good. Again, I just don't like the scene where he's talking to Una about the breakup, because I feel like it didn't fit what actually happened, and the direction felt really off. But apart from that, the rest of this episode, he is in peak Mount performance mode and just delivering really impactful scenes emotionally. And then the action sequences in this episode with the phaser rifles, and as he starts to feel his training coming back, and the doctor as well, and the fact that they're all combat trained, combat ready officers, and um, just going through that, everything else, and the VFX as always, especially going through the asteroid. I've got one of the images on the thumbnail of this YouTube video, because just the VFX are really, really good. So again, great episode of Star Trek. I love this show. Strange New Worlds, highly recommend it. I'm finding the second season way better than the first season. Like, I liked the first season, and it established the characters, gave us some fun arcs and everything else. But this season, I feel like every episode has just been a little bit better. It's like they're fine tuning that engine. They just hit the throttle and whoom, and then pull it back again, make some more adjustments, and then whoom, hit that throttle again, and then it's like I'm along for the ride, everybody. I'm having a lot of fun here. So love to hear your thoughts on this episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. I'll see everybody next week. Meantime, stay safe. Happy watching.